Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Temple of Light Center for Spiritual Living's LifeLine. It's a beautiful Thursday evening in Kingston, Jamaica. We've had some great rain, and our landscape is beautiful and lush and green, and we're going to talk about the lushness and greenness of our abundance and our church's abundance. And so we are going to now, I'm just going to turn over to our senior minister, Reverend Michelle Senegal, and she will just begin all things as we do with prayer.
So, good evening, everyone. Let's take a short journey inward. Inhaling and releasing everything that happened before this eternal now moment. All we have is now. And everything that we need, we have right now. And so it's from that place in my consciousness that I speak my word, invoking infinite intelligence to be fully present and operative within each and every one of us who are participating in this convening of LifeLine. I'm giving thanks in advance for the questions asked, for the answers provided, for the clarity that results. So it's with gratitude in my heart I can release my word now, sending it to the law of divine mind, knowing that it is conspiring to produce the very end that I have spoken into existence. So we just participate in the outpicturing right here and right now, and we let it be so, and so it is.
So it is. Friends, we have a wonderful guest with us this evening. He's a retired chairman and CEO of Grace Kennedy Limited. And while at Grace Kennedy, he led that organization from being a domestically focused conglomerate to being well on the way towards becoming a world-class global consumer group in food and regionally in financial services. This initiative was guided by the 2020 vision of the organization, and that was launched in 1996. Grace Kennedy now exports to over 60 countries and has financial services operations in over a dozen territories. Our guest is an engineer by training. His great love in life is giving back to the younger generation. And in fact, his book, The Business of Nation Building, excerpts from the selected speeches of Douglas Arain, is now used as a reference book by the Ministry of Education for high school students and through rap sessions in schools across Jamaica. Our guest is a Wolmerian, of which he's most proud, and he delights in traveling with family members to cheer athletes at their international events. In his fun time, he enjoys keeping fit, listening to all categories of music, and relishes dancing at meritone sessions. So quite a balanced personality. And it's our pleasure to have him as our guest this evening. So Reverend Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can kick it off with some, perhaps the first question to our guest. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thanks for saying yes. And so you all know the focus of tonight's Lifeline is church of business. And so we have an expert on business and who has a lot of experience and knowledge relative to nonprofit organizations. So we are in for an information download. So my first question to you, Doug, is mission versus profit. How do we, Temple of Light, ensure that our organization is in alignment with our spiritual mission?
Okay, thank you, Reverend, for that question. I'm going to start with our Science of Mind Declaration of Principles, because that's where we all start from. And the first one, I'll just read it out quickly. It says, we believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself. This is a really important sentence. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. I'm going to come back to that sentence. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is a logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. That second sentence, let's explore it. This one manifests itself in and through all creation. That means everything that we are involved in is with God, through God, in God. And that includes business. So there's no separation philosophically or spiritually between our spiritual lives, our family lives, our lives in our community and business. They're all one. So the question is, how do we maximize what we do to the best of our ability in order to worship God? I'll give you an example. When I was leading Grace Kennedy, I looked at it not only as a way to make a living for myself, that was part of it, but it was a spiritual mission to satisfy the unmet needs of our Jamaican and other Caribbean people wherever we lived in the world. And that's what really energized me. In fact, I had a joke about it, which I stopped giving. I was so excited about what I was doing as the chairman and CEO, and I was driving to work down South Camp Road. I said, you know what? I should be paying Grace Kennedy to do this. Not the other way around. I stopped giving the joke because somebody may have taken me seriously. But here's what I'm saying. Wherever we look around us, recognize it's all one. And so your question, Michelle, mission versus profit, it's all part of the same thing. But I will read, so I did my homework. I'll read from Proverbs 14:23. It says, all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. So one of the things that I would suggest to all of us is when we get to 10 to 7 this evening, we pull together what we've been talking about and say, what action are we going to take after this lifeline to make things happen? So if you can bear that in mind, make your notes.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to allow Sandy to get in. Just so that you all know, we're alternating. I have prepared questions, but we also have your questions. And so Sandy will be interjecting questions from the membership. Sandy.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Reb. We have a question from Dawn Williams, and she asks, how do we get church and business to work together for the good of all of us? She talks about, consider that we need to consider some of the greater activities which will generate income, for example, rental of space and encouraging more persons to tithe. What are some of the things that need to happen for the church to really expand and grow?
So that's a great question. And Dawn, I want to thank you for that question. We actually spoke with each other a couple of days ago to discuss it. And Dawn is so passionate about us finding ways to earn additional income that is in keeping with the church and at our physical location, as well as possibly elsewhere. But, before I speak anywhere, I do my research. So I spoke to a few of my friends who are in other denominations in Jamaica. And I said, and I'll speak about the Anglican denomination because that's the one that I know the most about. I said, tell me, is the Anglican denomination involved in income activities outside of donations weekly and tithing? And he said, yes, of course. He says, didn't you know that we own that apartment building on Tom Redcombe Avenue, which we built decades ago? Don't you know that we built another one on University Crescent, which we rent out? Do you know that we also have one that is built elsewhere, which is another apartment. I think it's called Daily Suites of All Hope Road. I said, so how do you incorporate that in your activities? He said, it's simple. We need to do it because our membership is declining and our donations are declining as a result. Virtually most churches in the world are having this issue post-COVID. It's something we need to recognize. And so everybody is figuring out a way to do it. So he says, we're using whatever resources God has given us to create income in order to keep the church running, including, for example, paying our priests and ministers and other operating expenses. So, by the way, the Anglican Church owns a lot of real estate. Do you know they own not all hospital? So there is an income earning activity. I believe it just breaks even, but the point I'm making is we should get out of our minds that it's a separate activity. One of the things I learned from them, I said, but how do you manage it internally? And they said, what they do, they actually have a small group that operates, and it's actually called the Lay Body Incorporated. And it has only 4 members, and all of them are businessmen. There are no members of the clergy on that Lay Body Incorporated. And they are the ones who make the business decisions about how to invest the funds that the church gets from whatever source and whatever assets they have, how to earn it more, how to earn more from them. So I think that's a model that we can explore, but it led me to some other points. This is a long answer to a short question. I know, but I'm getting out, as I said, I did my research, so I'm excited to share it. But one of the things I think we can do after this is to explore other denominations in Jamaica and elsewhere in the world and say, how are they solving whatever they have as an issue? Because all of us have the same issues.
Yes.
So I'll give you one example. Somebody said there's a particular church, which is one of the most successful churches in Jamaica. When they have the time for giving, they pass around their credit card machine so that you can donate by credit card right there on the spot. Now, as a business person, and a marketing person, I'm pretty sure that if we had a credit card machine where people could give there, we would get more than if people are there and they say, oh, I was time to give a collection. Let me see, I have $100 in my pocket, I'll give that. And it will encourage the process of giving. And that's something practical I think we should explore doing coming out of this session. I'm going to stop there because I have other things that we could do from a practical point of view.
And we're definitely wanting to hear those kind of towards the end, because that will prime us for the call to action that you want us to undertake. And I'm going to just underscore your comment about having the credit card machines, because our most prosperous churches in CSL, if you go to Mile High Church, there are ATM point of sale machines up the walkway. As you approach the edifice, you can just make your donations. They do not collect offering in church because people are taking care of it prior to their arrival. So it works. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about are, what are the most effective fundraising strategies for spiritual organizations?
Okay, well, that's a good one. So here's my view. The foundation of our church and any church are regular gifts, donations, and tithes from our membership. That is the core. We have to ask ourselves, are we being successful at that in the amount that we're getting? I'm not involved in internal management of the entity of our church, but I know that one of the things, we're under pressure because we're not getting as much post-COVID as we were before. So we need to address that. So one of the things we need to encourage is to say, being part of our church means actually being part of the process of investing in our church. And that's something that is very clear to me. I started off through my mother, who was a member, but then over time I realized this is my spiritual home. I need to give as generously as is possible to it. And I do that every month. And I do it by drawing a check. I will share with you how I actually give. So that is the core, and we need to explore how to get more of that. There, some people have spoken into the last few days who said the reason they now tithe is because they did a program years ago with Reverend John that convinced them it was a good thing to do. The question is, how can we do more of that in order to encourage people to give regularly? That's one. The second part of it is, yes, there's a role for other activities. And by the way, I've already made a point about the credit card machine. We need to make it as easy as possible to give. The other crucial issue for me is a longer term issue. And that is, I'm 76. And when I look around the church, I've been coming for 20 years and pretty well it's the same people. And here is the big risk I see, that we all pass on and we haven't done our succession planning successfully to bring in a younger generation who will make our community thrive and get larger. And to me, actually, that is the most important fundraising activity for us to do, because yes, it's one thing to solve giving for this financial year, but what about 5, 10, 15 years down the road? And so we can come back to it about some ideas for how we bring a younger generation into the church, which will enrich and liven our community.
You know, it sort of leads to one of the next questions I want to ask, which comes from Reverend Ann. And I think we started the conversation around it, so we can continue. I mean, some time ago you referred to creating the temple space as a spiritual Devon house. And Reverend Ann asks, in your experience, taking into consideration worldviews, what would be a sustainable way to accomplish this, how to make our community into a spiritual Devon house?
Okay, well, and thank you for that question. And the reason why I think we have this discussion about a spiritual Devon house is, let's explore it a little. Why are there so many people at Devon House? Because Devon House is meeting an unmet need that nowhere else is meeting. And so that's why there are now hundreds and thousands of people there. So there are people there because they want somewhere, if they're working class people and don't have anywhere in their neighborhood to carry the kids to play on a Sunday. If you're romancing your boyfriend or girlfriend, there's nowhere quiet. You can sit under a tree and say, may I marry you? By the way, I did propose here.
At Devon House?
Yeah, I proposed here.
Which one of us?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's meeting an unmet need. What we need to figure out is, what is the unmet need that the Temple of Light Center for Spiritual Living would satisfy for our Jamaican community at the corner of Ferry Avenue and Seymour Avenue. And it may not be exactly what Devon House does. In fact, it probably would be different because the needs are different. So one of the things we have to be careful about metaphors is to say we're going to use that exactly. So, we want to be the Devon House of spirituality. Let's have, let's get Mother's Patties to start a party place there, and let's have a Devon House ice cream and call it something else. Yeah, but that's meeting a different unmet need from the one we are looking for. So what we need to do is have a clear business plan about what we want Temple of Light to look like in 5 or 10 years' time. And then we work to that, putting the building blocks in place for that. One of the things I did is some research. By the way, I have dogs, so if you're hearing them, That's, is that disturbing you?
At all, we are good.
Are you hearing them?
A little bit, but that's
Oh,
fine.
okay. Okay, so one of the things that I did a little exploration on is that we are actually a registered charity. And the question is, registered charities are regulated, and I'm very familiar with it because I'm a trustee of Wolmer's Trust, which is a registered charity that owns the 3 Wolmer schools. My experience with the regulator is that primarily what they're interested in doing is to make sure that we have regular audited accounts submitted to them on time. That's what they spend their time on. I haven't seen them coming to say, oh, I hear you're renting out the auditorium, and is that a educational activity or an entertainment activity? Haven't heard the questions. When I checked with my counterparts in the Anglican Church, they said they have never had that issue. So therefore, I think we have a pretty clear slate in order to choose what activities we want. We can always, we have a lot of lawyers in CSL, so we can ask them, just check the Charities Act to see what we are or are not allowed to do. But personal experience, we can do anything that's aligned to our core activities. So having said that, what we need to do is to have a business plan to say, what will it look like in 5 or 10 years' time? They're low-hanging fruit. So therefore, we can say, okay, how do we, and I'm just throwing these out, because one, I think from a business perspective is to do 2 things. Find activities that have the lowest risk. If they fail, so in other words, you don't do some big project and it doesn't work, you have a white elephant. And secondly, that there's an unmet demand for it. So I've heard people talking about several, but there are 2 that come to mind. One is that people need somewhere to have functions like weddings or birthdays. So if we brought back our meditation garden, it's a great place to do that. And we also have internally our covered building that we can have the rest of functions, and it gives a rain alternative in case somebody is having it outdoors. I think there's a market for that. But you know what we need to do? A market survey to say what are the needs that people have? How much are people renting other places for? Are they finding it hard to book? Are they finding that it's inconvenient? We have a big advantage, parking. So that's one example. And the other one is, I've heard the idea about creating a tea room or cafe. My personal view, I don't see that as conflicting with our spiritual mission, because it would be bringing people of, I believe, like mine, especially based on what we'll be serving. And there may well be a need in the community. Somebody said, well, who are the people likely to come? Probably the ones from all the embassies in the community nearby. So those are things that need for us to act on, but it must be grounded on a solid business base. It can't be, oh, I think it's a good idea, let's do it, in that regard. So that's where we actually should start in that regard.
Okay, thank you. So I have another question for you. And this is a question that we discuss at board meetings all the time. And just like everywhere else, it's not unique to Temple, giving is down ever since COVID. And so we were saying, well, maybe if the congregation knew truly what our finances were, they might be inclined to give more because they love the Temple of Light. So my question is, what are your thoughts around providing financial reports on a regular basis to the congregation so that, number one, it's in their consciousness around what our needs are to run this business called church or the Temple of Light, and also in our quest to be transparent and accountable?
Okay, so I couldn't agree with you more on that one. In fact, let me share a parallel with you. I did a rap session with a prep school, not Wolmer's, another one asked me. And they're struggling to make ends meet because teachers' salaries have gone up tremendously and fees have not. So they're actually probably in a lost position. So they're saying, you know, how do we tell people about it? I said, well, tell them every term, get out a set of accounts and make it public and share it with everyone at the end of every term. So that's 3 times a year. And you don't have to make it complicated. You just have income, you have expenses, you like salaries, and then you have another category, electricity, water, and then miscellaneous expenses. You add it up and it will show a profit or a loss. So it's easy for anybody to understand that. But the key is to do it regularly and to do it on time. I appreciate when it's done at the audit, at the annual general meeting is very helpful to me, but that's the only time I know, unless I ask somebody and say, tell me, how's the temple doing? I wouldn't know otherwise. So here is a big issue we face. Culturally in Jamaica, this is not the norm, but I can tell you it's becoming the norm because that's the way best in class businesses and all organizations around the world are run. The charities that I interact with in the United States and elsewhere, you can go online and see their accounts. You can see what they are spending money on. You can see what they have used the donations for. So we need to do that. The issue we face is some resistance to say, yes, but if we tell people, won't they come if they say that we're not making up, that we don't have a surplus? I said, well, if nature abhors a vacuum, if you don't fill it with facts, then rumor will fill it. So my view on that is, let's do it. The other thing I've learned in business, I haven't seen a major decision in my business career made on a unanimous basis. But once I used to get to 80% of us agree and 20% not, I said, let's go with it. Because we'll never convince everybody to do it the way we think is best. And also what I say is, look, if you do something, there are only 2 outcomes. Either it works, great, or it doesn't work. And then we learn from that to do it differently the second time around. So you want my view, every quarter, we bring out a set of unaudited accounts. We share it with everybody who is at Temple. We could even, if you want, put it on the website and say, this is where we are. And I think it will make a big positive difference.
I've made a note of that because, yes, we do get that information when we do our annual general meeting, but it really could make a difference that we have a quarterly meetup after church on a Sunday. And we do 2 or 3 things, one of which would be including the unaudited accounts for the period before. It really could make a difference. I have a question again from Reverend Anne, and I think this one is near and dear to our hearts, and this is about how to bring in that younger cohort of members. She says, what important elements and why should the temple pay attention to designing a strategic plan that would target an age group likely to be attracted to the teaching of change your thinking, change your life?
Okay, so what are the important elements? Well, the first one is to define which target it is, which cohort are we aiming at?
For me, I think it would be like maybe 18 to 36, 40.
Okay, so that defines it for us. And that's a good range. When I came to Temple, I was probably 40 years old, so I was at the upper end of that range. But yes, and so I think it's an absolute necessity for us to do that now. And what we need to do, again, is to determine how other denominations have been so successful at bringing young people in because they're like magnets. And we can't just say, oh, well, it's because of the way that they may approach their relationship with God. There are other things, but we don't know what they are. So let's go and find out. So I have some views on it. One is that um, the older ones, need to say to everybody we know, I'd like you to come to our church. That is, but that would be people more than likely in our age group. But if there are people who have children, we say to them, you come along and bring your children, because we have lots of children and in today's world. And remember, Jamaica is in a crisis. People are crying out to say there's no moral guidance for our young people. And I said, it's great to come here because they'll be surrounded by good young people of integrity. Get a critical mass of them. And then you start asking those young people to ask others. I heard we have had 2 sessions recently that have been very successful with young people. I think one is an outing to Port Antonio, Portland. Another one is a pool party. Let's find a way to do more things like that. There's one I believe that is a sweet spot for us, and that's to start a youth band. And why do I say that? Because we live in a culture where young people are immersed in music far more than we are. And also music that's participatory. A lot of them want to sing or learn to play a guitar or drums or something. It's not just listening to music. And then their friends will come. And in addition to that, whenever I've gone to churches that seem to have a lot of young people in them, they have a band. Now, how come I'm there? Well, it's usually a wedding or a memorial service or something. But I have to ask myself, what is it that is this magnet that's drawing those folks? So that's my suggestion. And that one, I would personally contribute to myself financially to get it started, because I believe it is so, so important to go. And so much fun. By the way, this is another issue, and that is the kind of music that we have. You have to do a market survey. I think we need a focus group, and you play different hymns, and you ask the young people, which ones do you rate on a scale of 0 to 10, and see which ones you think would be most appropriate for Sunday service. Because the generations have changed, their tastes are different, mine are different as well. So therefore, I listen to a different genre of music. I'll be candid with you. If we were playing more gospel music, I love gospel music. It's what carried me through my 2 years at Harvard Business School, because I used to go to a black church within walking distance of the campus, and it was so inspiring to me. I think it's Reverend Senegal and AME, that's the African Methodist Episcopalian.
No, that's an African Methodist.
Yes,
Right,
yes,
right.
yes.
Yeah. So I used to go there, and that music, I go there early and just listen to the music. It was so inspiring. I noticed that our young musician, pianist, he plays it incredibly well. So I'd like to hear more of that. And also remember, we have an overseas audience. What would they like to hear? Would they like to hear us singing hymns that, I suppose, if you tuned into a service in the UK, you would hear the same ones? Or would you like to hear those with a Jamaican or Caribbean flavor that have come from our own roots, from our own members who have created and penned our own music, our own hymns? So, and you can see I'm passionate on this subject. So let me keep quiet and wait for the next question or comment.
Well, I just wanted to say I'm passionate on this subject as well. And for many years, I have been doing my research around the next generation and what brings them to spiritual community. So you all probably know Joel Osteen, and his venue holds 30,000 people.
Yes.
And those 30,000 people primarily are between 18 and 40. And they're there for the music. And the music became so much a part of the Sunday program that now you do praise and worship for an hour if you want to, and that's primarily the young people, before you ever hear Joel Osteen speak. I went to a concert at Church of the Redeemer in Gaithersburg, Maryland, with Israel. His last name is Houghton, and the New Breed. 5,000 young people. I was the oldest person there. And guess what? No seats. They stood and they rocked and hands up and praised for 2 full hours. They came. So I echo what you are saying about the music. The music is a draw, it is an attractor, and I think that we need to become more contemporary in our music. So thank you for saying that. Any other innovative ideas that you gleaned from your research, your social research with other denominations?
Are you asking me?
Yes,
Oh, that's a question. Oh, it's not a
that's a
rhetorical.
question.
Okay, so
There was a long prelude, but that was a
okay,
question.
okay, so I've already said what we all need to do. Everybody who is listening and in church for we can mention is go out and find how other denominations are finding ways to bring young people into their churches, and they already have. One of the questions I'm going to go and find out, why, if I were a Seventh-day Adventist, would I spend from 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning till 6 p.m. on a Saturday, me and my family with my children at my church? Why? There must be something happening. I mean, people tell me, well, you have church and then you have sessions where the children can play and you have programs for self-improvement. The thing is, I've never been to one of them, so I don't know, but I'd really like to find out. And also, I'm coming back to this issue. There is a crying need in Jamaica for people to say, I want a moral compass for my children, because there are so few ways for them to have that. And that's one of the sources of us having the crime that we do. So if we can participate effectively in that regard, I think it would make a huge difference. When we get the facts, then we can get in a huddle and say, okay, this works well for these folks and this works well for those, but this is what works well for us. The other thing to do, I can't overemphasize this, ask young people what they want, and to do it in a structured way. Have a few focus groups, do a market survey. Sandy, you're familiar with the business techniques to do this. You know, no business nowadays would launch a new product without doing this. So why would we go out to go and start doing something as a new initiative without doing our activities? I see Vance putting a message in there.
Yes, he says, Auntie Lilith Nelson, who is a big core part of the Temple Youth, says that young people have already given their ideas about what they want. So Reverend Anne should have access to that, and so we can tap into that. We already have acts, but I like the idea about the focus group with the music, and I'm going to set it up.
Okay, next
Okay.
question.
Oh gosh, there's just so much. Stakeholder engagement. This is now coming from Reverend Michelle, that's you. Sorry, I'm going on the
That's
wrong.
fine.
Okay.
It's like cricket. It's like cricket. There are two battles at both
One
ends.
at each side.
The question is
All right.
who is being bowled to?
Yes. Well, you are the batsman at the crease right now.
Yeah.
Auntie Lil asks, she says, I think that the church is a business. She's agreeing with that. But her question is, what are the parameters, limitations, and constraints, if any, for the growth and development of the business?
Okay, whose question is that?
This is Auntie Leaf Nelson.
Oh, okay. All right. So the question is, what are the parameters? What
Limitations and constraints,
are the
right?
limitations? That's
Limitations and constraints
okay.
for the growth and development of the business.
There's a one sentence answer to that. It is completely up to us. We decide what our own construct is. because it can be anything that we choose. Because let me go back to the first declaration that I read at the beginning, which is this one, which is God manifests itself through an all creation, but is not absorbed by the creation. So in other words, everything we do, spiritually, family, in business, is one. The question is, how do we then define it? Okay, let me give you an example in Grace Kennedy. When I joined Grace Kennedy as a young man, we were a diversified Jamaican conglomerate with 30 or 40 different businesses. And most people may not know this. We actually own, besides food and activities like that, we own a travel agency, we own a metal fencing company, all kinds of things. There are historical reasons for that because we had exchange control. So therefore we couldn't, if we had a great idea, we couldn't export that idea to another country because we weren't allowed to. We had to get permission from the central bank to do it. So you said, I did well in food. What can I do next? Oh, I buy a travel agency. Whereas if we were in a larger society, we'd be able to focus on one thing and do it really, really well. When Jamaica opened up to the rest of the world, we had to make a decision, or else we'd have gone out of business. So what we said, out of those 30, 40 businesses, we'll choose at most two, and we'll focus on that. And we chose two, which are branded foods and financial services. Branded foods globally and financial services regionally. And we sold off everything else and said, let's just concentrate on those two. And that has grown to be much larger than what we were before when I joined the company in my 30s and 40s. And so it's up to us to decide. And so we went through a process to decide that foods and financial services were the best for us. How did we decide that? And maybe that's a clue for what we decided to do. What we decided is that our distinctive competencies within the company were greatest in those two areas. And we could offer more to the world in those two than anything else we're doing. And so that's why we chose those two, and everything else we said, other people can do that, and we divested them. So the question we have to ask is, what is TOL, CSL really, really good at? And what is it then that we would say would include us to make us even better at that? So I don't have the answer for it. But let me tell you the way it would work. If we knew what that was, and you had two proposals, which is to say, and I'm just taking this at random because I've heard people talk about it. Should we have, should we become a venue for people to come and have social functions at, or should we use the land and build an apartment building and rent it out, or build an apartment, or build a commercial building and rent it out? The question to that is, I don't know what the answer is, but if we had a framework that said, this is what our mission is, and these are the parameters within which we will work, then the answer would be very clear. It wouldn't be a matter of opinion. Somebody would say, well, Doug, how could you ever make a suggestion about building a big building on the 1 acre that we have vacant? It would take the emotion and the personalities out of it, because it would be based on on your basically the parameters, the business parameters that you have set. There's another reason why this is so important, and I mentioned it in passing: risk management. In business, whatever you do, you want to make sure, of course, that it works, but if it doesn't work, that it doesn't drag down the rest of the company. And the same thing applies with us. So therefore, we have to go through that test to make sure that whatever we do is within our capabilities.
I want to share something, if I could, because I have heard I've been here a year, you all. I just celebrated 1 year, and I met with different members in the congregation, and they had lots of entrepreneurial ideas. But for whatever reason, the ideas weren't always adopted. And the reason was, is there was the thinking that we might drift away from our mission and therefore jeopardize and compromise our charitable status, our tax exempt status. However, the whole question of mission and vision, I think if we knew what the Global Heart Vision was, I'm just going to give you a few excerpts of that, then we would know that just about everything is allowable. So, Global Heart Vision, just an excerpt. We envision a world where each and every person has enough food, a home, and a sense of belonging, a world of peace and harmony and enfranchisement and justice. We envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, where there is generous and continuous sharing of resources. We envision a world which has renewed its emphasis on beauty, nature, and love through the resurgence of creativity, art, and aesthetics. We envision a world where there is no homelessness and there is justice for all. So, with that said, that in my mind gives us a whole lot of license to do a number of different entrepreneurial things that would perpetuate the existence of the Temple of Light. And I'm very concerned about the Temple of Light being around for the next generation. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew a little bit about the Global Heart Vision. We have introduced it, I know I have, a couple of times since I've been at Temple, and I'm going to continue to revisit it. So those folks that were the naysayers around what we can't do, I just want to say that that vision is inclusive of so much, and it gives us so much latitude.
I agree with you 100%.
And that is that the Global Heart Vision, Rev, is in alignment with one of the questions Lilith was asking. So I'll just share it anyway. It's the last one I have here. It says, we talk often about the core purpose of the church, which is teaching and sharing the spiritual principles of the science of mind. And she asks, how can this business satisfy this core and yet plan and execute strategies and actions for survival, growth, and development as it caters to the needs of its target groups? In other words, the question is our core purpose versus, business activities. And so the way the conversation has gone, I'm not seeing a versus anymore. I'm really getting a sense of, we have this wonderful space and everything we're doing is God expressing. So we will always be true to our core purpose. In the meantime, creating space, opportunity, and experiences to lift people's spiritual awareness and open the heart and do those wonderful things. So it's all compatible, I think. What do you think, Doug?
I couldn't agree with you more. And let me quote again from my research. You could read Matthew 25, 14 to 30, the parable of the talents. So, we could bury our talents, and in 20 years' time, we could say, yeah, what we have done a good job. We have the same building, we have the same land, and so we have done a good job. Or we could do great things, not only the land, but with the people that are drawn to our community, and that's really the key. In fact, I don't think we should limit ourselves just by the real estate. It is how you actually come up with ideas that will, I'll go back to it again, satisfy the unmet needs of people out there in the society. So I'll give you an example from business, what Reverend mentioned, where people have lots of ideas, all kinds of ideas, and we welcome them in business. But then you have a filter to put them through. You say, okay, you have this idea, let's explore it. The first one is, if we were to develop that, how many people would want to buy it or consume it or be part of it? Or if it was a service, how many people would avail themselves of that service. And that is the first one to satisfy, because if you don't have people who are interested in whatever is being proposed, then it won't work. So that's why we need to be clear on it. And the way to do that is in a business-like way. If you look at what, as again, the Anglican Church does, and I don't want to say that's the only way, it's the only one I got around to being able to speak with implicitly. They have a group of 4 business people who basically oversee all of their business activities, and they're separate from the clergy. And so they have been making wise decisions that have worked for them. And maybe that's something we need to think about, that we have a group of folks like that who can guide us so that we make sustainable business decisions in that regard.
Yeah. And I just wanted to share a little bit of my research as well, you all. It's not a coincidence. There's synchronicity around this conversation and a panel that I am hosting for the ministers gathering next month. And it's about this very thing, because Sinister Spiritual Living is having a similar experience like all other denominations, except the Mormons are growing, except the Seventh-day Adventists are growing. And so I've invited a Mormon and a Seventh-day Adventist Unity Worldwide headquarters, and then also UFBL, because they are growing here locally, to learn from them. You know, what is it that you all are doing? So the Mormons focuses on family. Something for every family. And you gave an example of that earlier, Doug. They can stay all day because the children have this and the parents have that. And the Seventh-day Adventists have always had as a core value and mission that's focused on health and wellness. But if you Google Seventh-day Adventist, the first thing that will pop up is a big health and well-being campaign that is global. And so that is another attractor, and it aligns with our mission as well. So I'm just saying that it's very easy to be in alignment with our mission and serve the needs of prospective members of Temple of Light.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. For those who may not know, Andrews Memorial Hospital is owned and run by the Seventh-day Adventists. And some of the biggest donations I know of went to make that hospital bigger. If you drive past, you'll see the name of one of the donors on their newest building. And here's another point. I just throw it in. I used to smoke for 18 years. From I was 18 years old until I was 36. Yeah. And I went to a 5-day program for giving up smoking at the Seventh-day Adventist location right there at Andrews Memorial. And that's 1984. And I haven't smoked a cigarette since. So that's what the Seventh-day Adventist Church did for me. So that was an unmet need.
Oh, yes.
We have to think outside the box. What are people looking for? You know, people are, it's not by accident you find churches filling the health and wellness space, because it's in alignment with our own spiritual beliefs.
Awesome.
So there may be other areas that we can think of, and we shouldn't limit ourselves only to say, oh, we have 2 acres, what are we going to do with it? Of course, we can do lots, but there are other things we can do that can go way, way beyond the corner of Fairway Avenue and Seymour Avenue.
You know,
I think that we start, starting with what we have, leveraging what it is that we have. And this speaks to Sunita's point in the chat, is restoring the meditation garden, re-beautifying the meditation garden, because it will sell itself. Like you're saying, there is a dearth of green space in Kingston, and we have beautiful green space. And so if we restore it to its brilliance and its beauty, it will sell itself.
okay. Wow, I can't believe that the hour has gone so quickly. You know, I have one lastly question for you, Doug, and it is with regard to taking action. We have about 5 minutes left, and I'd like to do a wrap up and so on. But just very, very briefly, what can we do to really move us from we do a lot of talk, and I think we alluded to this in the beginning of the conversation. We have great ideas. We see things that need to happen, but it's perhaps the 20% of the group that's doing 80% of the work. What we need to do to really stimulate other members of the community to become part of, to open themselves to the service and to contribute to the growth of our community.
So are you asking me that, or is that another rhetorical question?
No, I'm wondering if you have a copy, because I have this wonderful list that I'm going to type up and share when we're complete. So if you have any ideas, I will be happy to record them.
Okay, so I jotted down 3. Okay, and of course, it's not only 3. Number 1, to find the key to having the younger generation join us, and to do that within the next 6 months. Literally this is August, by February of next year, we'll have a program in place that has lots of young people coming to Temple, starting that way. Second one is in terms of decision making for ideas, for income earning, which would be outside of gift giving or tithing or weekly donations. That we get a group of, I would say, 3 or 4 business people who are members of the church, but they're not part of the clergy. And you say, hey, folks, you advise us on the business issues, whether this business idea will work or not. The advantage with that is you will get effective decision making and shift it out of, a discussion among, I don't know how many people, 12, 15, 20 people about, or what's good or not. It will be based on business principles in that regard. And of course, the church would have the overall say on this. To say, yeah, that's a good idea. It might earn a lot of money, but it wouldn't necessarily work for us. And then the other one is that all the ideas that we have coming out of this, we document them and we take action. I would love to see a credit card machine in place within the next 60 days. And also, I would love to see accounts every 3 months that is shared with us. Some real practical things for us to increase the amount of giving that is happening.
Okay.
I would love to see more programs on the value of tithing, whoever might run that. So those are my suggestions.
Okay, awesome. Wow. Well, we could do this for another hour, because it's been so stimulating. And I had planned to go through this list, but the list got longer and longer and longer. So I am committing to creating a summary of
It's not necessary, Sandy. I let the robots do it. It's being done right now as we speak.
Oh, well, we definitely will have our summary. And I would like to see it circulated to our community. This is what we discussed. This is what we agreed on. Sorry, Sheena, I haven't forgotten you. She says, we want music. And congrats, Reverend Michelle, on your first year anniversary. This is from Sheena. And Arlene says, we need to use social media more effectively. So these are some things that we need to really do and think about. Wow, this has been a rich and wonderful discussion. Doug, you'd like to know how we appreciate your contribution in this regard. We would just like to thank you for your time, for your talent, and for your treasure. You've been so supportive of our community, and I know Daisy is happy and smiling with joy and pride at our little boy for his awesome presence and how he has grown up.
So I just want to bless him.
Yes, yes.
We love you, we bless you, we so appreciate you, and we behold the Christ that is you. And
Mm,
so it is. Thank you so much, Doug.
yes.
Thank you
Friends,
for,
thank you.
and if I can just say by closing, if we close our eyes, God is all there is.
God is
God
all there
and
is.
I and everyone in our community are one in God. Everything we do is centered on the God spirit within us. We are not attracted to anything that would put us off course in bringing the truth that we know, which will set us free to everyone with whom we come in contact. I reaffirm my faith that I know that we are on the right track and that God is making our path through easy and clear. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you, the divine spirit within us. And so it is.
So
So
it
it
is.
is.
Amen and ashe.
Wonderful practitioner and training. Thanks, folks, for joining us. Thanks
Oh,
for being a
well,
part of
before you close, let me say, how did I learn that? I went to class.
this. So we
So
need you all to come to class. Okay.
well, I mean, I learned that how to pray years ago, and I continue to use it every day. But I'm saying that for those who are listening, because a lot of people may not know how powerful it is to learn to pray the way we pray, because they haven't. You really need to go to the class that goes over, whatever it is, 6 or 7 sessions. So I just throw that in at the tail end for those who,
Awesome.
folks,
Thank you.
if you have never done the course on how to pray,
Mhm.
go find out when the next one is starting.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
Rev.
Good
And
night.
thanks, fans, for your technical support. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Until next time, this is Sandra Cooper saying thank you so much for being part of our lifetime.
Thank you, everyone.